Hello there, good afternoon, welcome back to Spotlight. This Friday afternoon we are talking about euthanasia, assisted suicide, assisted dying. It has many terms, and we're talking about all of its ramifications really, and where we are today here in the UK. Now joined by Mustafa Raza Khan Beg. Good afternoon to you. You're an Islamic researcher. I'm sure you're going to have a lot to say on this subject, aren't you, of euthanasia and assisted dying, reading some of the extracts from the Quran. Is it something that is never considered in the Islamic community?
Yeah, basically in Islamic law we have many things which the order or the ruling is absolutely straightforward and clear cut. There are other areas where there is room for debate among scholars, but suicide in all its forms is categorically condemned by all Muslims. And you will not find an opinionist, you will probably in this situation not even find a minority opinion, because the Quran gives a ruling regarding suicide and regarding the killing of innocent life as well, which is, and these two things, these two concepts are termed together, and for example in one place in the Quran it says that whoever kills one life, a single soul without reason, it is as if he has killed the entire mankind.
So even in a situation, hypothetically shall we say then, where there is choice, you have an individual who has a terminal illness, they know they will more than likely not be around in 6 months' time, even if they made the choice that when, in advance, that when they were incapable of making decisions, that they could express a wish to die rather than suffering unduly, that would never be considered? Because we are talking, we are not talking necessarily about a deliberate act of killing here, we're talking about a choice.
Well, your question raises 3 points in my mind. One is the issue of choice.
Yes.
And the first thing I'd like to say is that when you commit yourself to a religion or to Islam, then that is a commitment. That commitment then entails that you follow all the precepts and all the commandments which the religion requires one to obey. So the element of choice in that situation, because the religion doesn't allow any dispensation or choice in this regard, it removes the element of choice.
So the phrase from the Quran, forgive me, Allah decides how long each of us will live, is taken absolutely and literally.
This is exactly what I'm going to come on to now.
Please
As
do.
you said, that in euthanasia or in assisted suicide, when a patient is told that it is more than likely or is most likely that you will not live beyond a certain amount of time, and I think the key is, in the way you just said it, it's this issue of more than likely. It's not definite. And in the Quranic concept and the Islamic concept, the person who decides the end of life or the time which the end of life is decided or is appointed, that's only done by God only. So that specific time when a person is going to die or is going to live, that's decided.
But even regardless of the amazing advances in medical science, so the religion
of course not, because even if you look at the advances in medical, I know we've got medical experts here, even if you look at cancer patients, so they can never give you an exact time when somebody is going to die, or whether they can say for definitely whether somebody will survive or die in many cases, and they can never put a time limit on it.
No. And but there is a difference between maybe a physical condition and between something which doesn't have, may be progressive or degenerative, but there are situations, brain tumours, some forms of cancers, where treatment can only go so far, and there is only one way from there.
I think the point here is, one is again the issue of whether you can put a pinpoint, a definitive time of when a certain person is going to die. The second thing which we must remember in this, which is the basis of the whole argument, is the whole point of life and the sanctity of life, that life is sacred. And as Muslims we believe that the person who gives us life is God. So because he is the person who gives you life, he is the only person who has the right to take that life. This is why suicide in all its forms, whether it's an expression of being impatient or of not being able to bear the burdens of life, in whatever forms that is, whether that's medical, whether that's social, whether that's mental, a person does not have the right to take his own life, because this right is only reserved for God. And the Quran only gives two situations two scenarios where life can be taken. One is if you are in a just war, in a battle, and you have the right then to kill those people, only those who are fighting against you, not innocents.
Yes.
And the other scenario is in a legal case where a judge may decide in the case of murder, if there's enough witnesses and the case is proven that somebody may die in retaliation for another person's life. These are the only two scenarios in which life can, and in those two, in reality, again, that's not the right of humans, again, because that again is the right of God. And it's described as these retaliatory slaughter in Islamic law for murder is described as a right of God in the Quran, the limits of God.
Caro, if I can bring you in here, it's refreshing to hear that Muslim point of view in one sense, in that it never comes out in the media, and thank you, Mustafa, for that, because that is amazingly refreshing to hear it in plain speak, if you like, in everyday language. But it adds, it's not the only religion against assisted suicide, as we know.
Absolutely. But then again, it is back down to choice. People choose their religion, or their religion chooses them, and they choose to live that religion, and that is brilliant. And if they have got that support and that belief system, that's fantastic.
Yes.
But equally, there are people who don't.
Yes.
And the difficulty is what happens to them. They cannot live their lives in a belief system to which they do not have a part.
Yes.
That's not how a civilization works on any level.
Yes.
And equally, they can't understand it. So it's not like we're going to say, fine, if I was caring for a Muslim patient, I would respect
Yes.
their belief systems, I would respect their dietary laws, I would respect them as an individual.
Yes.
And I would not expect them to conform to my ideologies. In much the same way that I'm a vegetarian, but I wouldn't expect all my patients to become vegetarian. So I think, in a way, people who have got a strong religious belief are almost protected because this isn't an issue for them. It's wrong, end of debate. That's great.
Hans Christian, does that make the whole debate easier? Would it be simpler if we were all to believe the same way? Would that take the debate out of this? It wouldn't stop the degenerative conditions, though, that people suffer, regardless of their religion.
I mean, obviously the situation isn't like this. I mean, there is obviously a variety of
Yes.
views and opinions. Yeah? But having said all this, as a society as a whole, we have to have some, foundations upon which we build a society. For example, truth, or life.
Yes.
Or or honesty, etc. Once you take that away and say, well, we don't believe in honesty, or we don't believe in for example, in truth, then I think we might as well all pack up and go home.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Therefore, there needs to be some joint approach that we all subscribe to. And this country, as a Christian country, originally one was secular, yes, but still is founded on these principles. And I think one principle, which I think is very, very important, whether it's in is this sanctity of life. Once we do away with that, I think we end up in a situation where life becomes devalued, and where people feel that they're perhaps, as we discussed a bit earlier, if they're, for example, pressurized into agreeing to euthanasia, even though they perhaps don't want it. I think it's very, very simple. I think we need to, for example, for this reason, I find it very interesting that all the disability rights groups are very, very much against euthanasia, because they say, well, we then would very soon feel pressurized into agreeing to euthanasia because we are because we are not right, and therefore this is an issue there.
Can I just bring you back in on this, Mustafa, as well? How do Muslims and Islam, how does it look upon what happens in the rest of the world and the decisions that any country makes over this kind of matters?
I think a good point which our guest made earlier Carol made earlier was that it is regarding. So we don't say that people who don't follow Islam are bound by the decisions which Islam, that is a choice for them.
Yes.
But obviously we look at people when they, as was just said, who that this is a form of devaluing life, and we do look at that with great sadness. And with, Muslims across the world get upset when we see these certain things and these certain laws being passed, which in effect are a means of devaluing life. And what this actually causes is, as we just said, it opens up all sorts of avenues for assisted suicide. It doesn't just stop physician-assisted suicide. I mean, I've seen people myself I've spoke to who think they are locked in a cycle of depression, and they feel that the only way they can get out of this is by ending their life. And I spoke to somebody personally about this, And they think that and if you read about, obviously, depression, one of the major thoughts what people get during depression is suicide.
Yes.
And if you have these sort of views popping out more and more in the media, or some form of it even legalized, I think it then in fact encourages, or perhaps even puts pressure on people that perhaps to get out of this difficulty and the situation I'm in, the easiest route or the simplest way out of this is to take my own life, whereas this should be a society, government, medical professionals, psychiatrists, everybody should be countering this and should be able to help these people who are in difficulty in whatever situation, whether it's medical or physical